Hello, welcome to another UTS Startups Confessions. Okay, I love that. Thank you very much for joining. Please welcome Kirstin Hunter from Techstars Sydney.
Hi everyone.
I am so excited for this. I'm excited for the program. I'm excited about yourself too and spending some time with you. Thank you for spending the time today. In 10 seconds for everyone watching at home, what is Techstars Sydney?
So Techstars is the global network that helps entrepreneurs succeed, and our program in Sydney is kicking off later this year, partnering with the New South Wales Government.
Okay. Yeah, lovely audience. So for people that may not know, can you give me a bit more detail on what Techstars is and the origins of it?
For sure. So Techstars has been going for around 16 years, and it's in 54 cities across the world. And the main program that we run is a mentor-driven accelerator. And so what that means is we select a small class of 12 companies and we surround them with as many awesome mentors who are founders and operators and strategists and people who've run businesses and people in corporates. And we bombard them with advice, and then we support them to put that advice into practice and help grow their businesses.
Okay. I should probably explain for the people at home as well. We have Russa Ali in the background doing some impressionist artwork on Techstars in particular. So you're going to see this evolve through the course of the video. If you're wondering what's happening in the background, I'll circle back to that again at the end. But thank you very much, Russa. I'll dive into more detail though. How does Techstars compare to other programs around the place?
Yeah, so there's a few different accelerators happening in Sydney, within Australia, across the world. You can get accelerators that focus on a particular niche, so health tech, med tech, deep tech, cyber, those kinds of things. So in those programs, you'd be with other startups who are doing the same kind of thing as you, and you'd have mentors limited to that kind of space. Our accelerator is industry agnostic, which means that we'll be taking people from all sorts of different industries and using all sorts of different technology. And wherever they are, we'll help them get to the next level. So in the sort of Sydney and Australian landscape, we kind of sit in between StartMate and Antler, if you've heard of those programs before. So Antler tends to skew a little bit earlier stage than we do. They'll take founders from before you even have an idea, and they'll help you come up with an idea and figure out what you want to build. And then we are at the sort of early stage ideas. So you've got an idea, you've maybe got an MVP or a prototype, you've got some early users, and you're ready to figure out how you take those early users and build a really awesome business. StartMate's kind of in a similar space to us, but they can take companies that are a little bit later stage. So they can take companies that might have already raised a chunk of money, might come in at a higher valuation, whereas Techstars, we have sort of the global terms. So the benefit of that is when you become a part of the Techstars program in Sydney, you're getting the exact same investment into your business as every other Techstars company across the world. But the downside is that we can't negotiate those terms either to keep it fair across the world.
Okay, so tell me more about that. What is in it for founders?
Yeah, so for founders, selection into the Techstars Accelerator comes with $120,000 investment into your business. And for that money, Techstars will take around 8 to 9% of equity. That can feel like a big chunk of equity in your business, but the flip side of that means that we are absolutely invested in helping you succeed. And when you succeed, we succeed. And so what that means is at the end of that 13-week program, you're part of the Techstars network for life. You have me as your ongoing mentor for as long as you need me for, as long as I can be useful to you. And you can tap into that global network at any point after you finish the program. And even if your company that you go through the Techstars program with doesn't ultimately end up being the one that is wildly successful, you're still a Techstars alum, and so you can still tap into that network for your future endeavours as well.
Okay. And I'm trying to think of any other program in Australia where effectively you end up in an equity pool with how many companies has Techstars been involved in?
Oof, thousands.
Thousands. So that's a kind of single company structure that owns all of those companies.
But yeah, that's right.
It's hard to think of a comparable motivational tool to get the people behind Techstars to care about a company here in Sydney. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, like, we aim for the experience of coming through a Techstars accelerator to be transformational for your business and for you personally. And I think once you've been through a program like that and you've felt that value, you want to make sure you do everything you can to help other people get that same amount of value as well. And that level of generosity is built into the Techstars network. So founders who've been through other Techstars programs in other cities or within the last 16 years are super generous for the current cohort of companies and are willing to give their time to help the next generation of Techstars founders be successful as well.
Okay. I'd like to ask a little bit about yourself as the initiator of all that generosity inside Australia. What's your background and maybe a little bit about the super related startup as well?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess started my career as a lawyer and a management consultant, as a lot of people do. I spent 10 years in professional services, and what I found was I loved the work when I was there and I learned so much, but what I loved most was getting to see how that work had a real impact when I could put it to work for community projects. So I was the person who always put their hand up for volunteering activities, community impact day, like going and working for a charity. But when I came back to work after having my daughter, I didn't have the time to volunteer anymore. And it just meant that left with just the corporate day job, it wasn't as exciting for me as getting to see what benefit that could have. And then also I had a new daughter, and this was 2014, and it was the first of the really horrific IPCC reports. And I just sort of realized that 2040 is not a very long time away when you think about it in the context of your children's lifetime. And so I really wanted to make a move and make sure that my career was having the kind of impact that I could be proud of when I was talking to my child about it. So I came across to Future Super, which at the time was a tiny, tiny startup in the superannuation space focused on ethical and fossil fuel-free investing. I was employee number 10 in that business, and what was really interesting was they'd been going for a year and they'd had quite a bit of success, but I really saw this massive potential to take Future Super mainstream and to change the conversation in superannuation. And so, for a lot of you here and for the people watching at home, super is something that feels like a tomorrow problem, like a 30 years tomorrow problem. But actually the decisions that you make about where you put your superannuation today will impact the world that's going to exist by the time you're old enough to spend it. So we did a heap of work figuring out how to concisely describe that. And in the time that I was with Future Super, we went from 200 million under management to $3.5 billion. $1 billion of that in super and 2.5 in other non-super products that we developed with a partner. So it was a huge period of growth, went through Series A, Series B, capital raise, and really that was what got me hooked on entrepreneurship and startups. After leaving Future Super, I went to a couple of other startups within the Sydney space. So I was at Bright for a while and then at Human. But really what I found is I love working with founders. I love working on a bunch of different crazy ideas, and I love sort of figuring out what those blockers are that stand in the way between an amazing idea and a passionate founder and a business that can have a huge amount of success.
Okay. Do you think Future Super would have been suitable for Techstars?
I think we would have been, but I think for me, the thing that I really loved about my time at Future Super was me and the two original co-founders, we had such different backgrounds. I was the business generalist, the big business person. Simon's background was at GetUp. He had a lot of experience in building consumer movements, and Adam's experience was at Australian Ethical, so one of the other super funds. And so between the three of us, we had this incredibly rounded skill set. And I think what was really cool for me was getting to see how the big business stuff that I had learnt over 10 years was so relevant in startups, but also you have to apply it in a certain way. And I think that sort of generalist approach to business is really what accelerators are great for. They take founders at whatever stage of experience you're at, whatever your business idea is, and we help bring those kind of missing pieces of how to set up a business, how to grow a business, and help you apply that within your own company.
What kind of difference does that make? Like in a hypothetical past week, you go back and apply the programming you have now to Future Super or similar companies. What difference does it make?
I think they're called accelerators for a reason. They're designed to try and accelerate those things that otherwise would take you years and years of trial and error to learn in how to run a business. So For me, one of the things that I'm really passionate about was in my sort of consulting days as well, is managing people and inspiring people to do their best work. And for me, that passion came from leading volunteers when I was a university student. And I sort of figured when I started working, if you can motivate someone to do something when they're not being paid, you know, like if you can apply that same approach to working with and inspiring and managing people in their paid jobs, like what an amazing opportunity. And so, you know, I guess that's an example that I really bring to the accelerator of a skill that I've learned over the last, you know, 20 odd years, that I want to make sure that the founders who I work with really understand that how they motivate and manage and inspire and develop the people who work for them in their business can be one of the drivers as to whether or not you're successful.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how much OpenAI you're using. You still need to motivate some people, maybe fewer people than you used to. Think forward 5 years. What kind of outcomes of Techstars do you want to see?
So it's such a great question. So we are, as I mentioned, the New South Wales government is supporting Techstars to be here, and we're supported to be here for the next 3 years. So hopefully if I do my job well in 5 years, we're still going. And by that point, some of the companies that start in the class in July will be at a point where they're really starting to grow and be really successful. And I would love to see in 5 years' time, the companies that have been through the earlier stages of Techstars Accelerator sticking around and sharing their learnings with the next generation of founders. And for those founders who've been through the program, whose companies are successful or not successful, because wrapping up a company is just as many lessons as being successful in business, that they're still a part of our ecosystem and they're supported by a network of incredible mentors and operators and strategists and business people and corporates, creating this sort of thriving ecosystem for startup founders.
Okay, beautiful. And badly needed in Sydney. Like the number of accelerators that have disappeared over the last couple of years because of the pandemic is terrible, and it's nice to see this kind of activity coming back in.
Yeah, definitely.
I think and I'm going to get into how people can make themselves appealing to you. Applications close on Wednesday, is that right?
That's right.
You've got 4 days, 5 days. Are there kinds of companies that you're looking for, or what attributes are you looking for, or what else can people do to be what makes sense?
For sure. So we sort of talked already about the stage of company. That early stage, you might have a prototype or an MVP, some early users, that kind of thing. We do have some flexibility. So if you're later stage, but you still think you could benefit from the coaching and network, don't let that hold you back. But for me, I think the founder and the team around them is super important, or their ability to inspire people with their idea, which is going to be key to building a team if they aren't yet at that point. So for me, I want to work with people who are super passionate about what they're building. And I don't care what it is, I just care that you care. So ideas from whatever industry or sector or technology, if you're excited about it, I'm going to get excited about it too. And that's one of my favorite things, is just getting to know new people and hear about what they're wildly excited about. We are industry agnostic, so we can accept businesses from any type of field. For me personally, I obviously have a real focus on climate, but really I think every business in 2023 is a climate business in one way or another. So there's the obvious climate businesses like climate tech, clean tech, where your product is driving climate outcomes, but every business is going to have to transition to a zero carbon economy. Some businesses will help others transition, but even outside of that, people who, you know, every business is a climate business in 2023. And so I care about climate, and I think business has a huge potential to change the way society works and drive positive outcomes for customers, employees, and the broader community. And so founders who think about their businesses in that way, like we are building a product that does good for the world, and the way we are building that product also does good for the world, that kind of idea really sort of really gets me excited about the business as well.
Nice. Would you like to see founders with any particular background, or where people have come from, or skill sets?
No, not at all. I mean, I think it's passion for your idea, and it's a curiosity about what you don't know. Even the most experienced business person still doesn't know a lot. And if you think about, people who are CEOs and executives in big corporates today, if they were going to go into a startup, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be more successful than someone coming straight from university. I think curiosity and creativity and problem solving and actively looking for problems and trying to find them and then trying to figure out how to solve them is such an important trait. And if you're an experienced business person or software developer, you need to have just as much curiosity and creativity as if you're an inexperienced person coming straight from university or straight from high school. And so I think it's less about what you've done before and more about how you're approaching the problems in front of you now.
Okay. I'm going to throw in a bonus question, maybe two more. Out the window, we have Tech Central. So it looks very similar to Ultimo normally looks at the moment. But over the next 10 years, there's going to be the Atlassian building, the Dexus buildings, the Overstation development, all these kind of new things that hopefully build a more interesting precinct. Do you have any thoughts about what that would ideally be? Because you are one of the catalysts for this becoming what it can be, operating out of Tech Central. What do you think this precinct has a chance to become?
I mean, it's such an open question, right? And all of us in this room will get to shape that, really. I mean, all of us logging on from home as well. But I think for me, so much of it is about that sort of supportive community to break new ground and try new things that haven't been done before. I'm super excited about the amount of investment into Tech Central because I think, like Sydney is kind of, it's kind of a little bit like the lucky country. Like we've got so much going for us, but we really haven't done anything to turn that into an advantage. Like we've got the beaches, we've got the harbour, we've got the big company headquarters, we've got Atlassian and Canva. We've got all of these things, but we just haven't really invested in building an incredible entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I think that's what's really changing with Tech Central is this recognition that, having not really done a lot in this space, Sydney's still pretty awesome. Imagine how amazing it could be if we really invest behind entrepreneurs and building an ecosystem around them. So I think that's a super exciting thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I like that. Fantastic answer. Sydney's never going to be the best place in the world to run a startup. We can hope that it will be, but I think that's optimistic. But it can be the safest, nicest, kind of most enjoyable place to run a startup.
Most inclusive, yeah.
Absolutely. And if we design for something that is not just selecting elite people, not just Harvard graduates that are going through their networks over in Silicon Valley or whatever, and solving the problems that make sense to solve from Australia, then maybe we end up with a different kind of ecosystem here that's going to look different to what you see overseas.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so.
But hopefully better.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll just sort of grab onto one of your points there. Like one of the things that's really awesome about Sydney is the level of diversity and, like cultural diversity, people from all sorts of different countries, economic diversity, intellectual diversity, like we're just this melting pot here in Sydney. And one of the things that really drew me to Techstars was the focus on diversity, not just as words that we all say, wouldn't it be nice if we had more female founders? Wouldn't it be nice if we had more founders of colour? But let's actually look at the numbers and let's really invest behind creating really diverse portfolios. And I think as well, talent is equally distributed within society, but VC funding is not. And I love the fact that Techstars CEO is very upfront about talking about the outsized returns of the future are going to come from parts of the community that aren't currently reflected in the VC funding landscape. And for me, that's super exciting because I don't come from, Sydney private elite school. I grew up on the Gold Coast. I moved down to Sydney and had that experience of how do I fit into this place? And I think it's super cool to have this opportunity to work with Techstars, be part of this global system, and to build a really interesting, diverse group of founders who we can put that sort of global network behind and help them be really successful.
Okay, beautiful. It's hard to beat that. I'm going to ask one final question though. So for yourself, with the entrepreneurial background that you have, how has entrepreneurship changed you as a person and how might it change the people that are going through Techstars as well?
Yeah, so it's such a great question, and I'm glad you gave me a bit of warning on this, because otherwise I would have really struggled with it. But I think for me, being an entrepreneur has made me less afraid of what I don't know. And, you know, like earlier on in my career, I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I had a lot of like worry about not getting things right. But I think once you move into an entrepreneurial space, you kind of lose that fear of not knowing. You become comfortable in the unknown, and you almost start looking for problems and looking for things you don't know, because they're where the opportunity is to really learn and develop. And I just love that feeling of like opportunity and possibility and confidence that comes from being able to walk into a new situation and think, I don't know anything about this, but that's okay. Let's get stuck in and figure it out.
Okay. Beautiful. That's a perfect point to end on. I am going to say we run these sessions every Friday at UTS Startups at Central, so 3:30 every Friday. Come on down. We have the best pizza you'll ever taste and free drinks, thanks to Amazon Web Services, so thank you, Amazon, for your support. I think this is an incredible culmination of what you've been working on there, Russa. Thank you very much. We're going to have a link in the description below for people that want to check out Russa's other work, but I think that deserves to be in the Techstars office somewhere. Yeah?
Definitely.
Yeah, do
when
we
I
think
have
so?
an office.
Okay, we'll sort you out for an office too. We're going to stop the camera and we'll go to a private, juicy Q&A section, so make sure you come down for that if you're watching at home. But for now, join me in thanking Kirstin from Techstars.
Thanks, everyone.